push the button again. Welcome, everybody. We're winging it. My name is Emmie, and this is my dear friend, Patricia. Welcome back to our channels. My channel's Holistic Genie, and hers is Spiritual Healing. And we are here for a third video on German New Medicine and chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia.
Yes.
Yes.
Part 3.
Part 3.
Yeah. And so in this one, we're going to just go over some of the healing modalities and processes that you move through in the different levels. And we talked about that in the previous video. If you haven't seen the other 2 videos, make sure to check those out. We'll have them in the description box below, because you'll want to see the first 2 parts for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So should I bring up the slideshow?
Yeah.
That helps with our memories. Oh, wait a minute. That's not what I wanted to do. See, I want to share screen first. There we go. Share screen. There we are. Okay, here we are. So yes. So fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and German New Medicine, part 3. And again, we just are putting this disclaimer up there that we're sharing this information for educational purposes only. And you want to make sure to research this more thoroughly on your own end. And if you're dealing with more complex conditions, to seek out a German New Medicine practitioner to support you for sure. And then just to review, German New Medicine was developed by German physician Dr. Hammer, and it asserts that illness and disease are in fact the body already moving through a specific biological healing process after resolving from some sort of conflict shock. In other words, illness and disease are not a problem. It's our perception of the discomfort presented in the body and the approach of modern medicine that is the problem. And the symptoms of fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and other autoimmune issues as well, they're a natural biological process that are the result of the generalized self-devaluation conflict, which we discussed in part 2. So you want to check that out for sure. So, what is that? That's lack of self-esteem, and that's really quite prevalent. And then in part 2, we did talk about the 4 different levels of healing. So healing through this generalized self-devaluation conflict, the gross body, which is physical healing, the subtle body is mind healing, causal body is spiritual healing, and the great causal body is God absolute. So today we're just going to move through all of those in some more detail. And these are just suggestions. This is like a really small piece of all that is out there to support you through these different healing phases. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There is no one right way to heal. Each person is different. And so therefore, each person is going to have different things work for them. What works for one person may not work for someone else. So we really encourage you, if you're just beginning your healing work, to just start educating yourself on the different modalities and different things that you can do, and see which ones resonate with you, and dig a little deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we have a whole list here for the gross body. And also these things are going to sort of transition between the different levels too. Some of the stuff in this gross body healing is going to lead you into the mind healing, and the mind healing is going to lead you into the spiritual healing. So, and you can be in the spiritual healing and come back and do some gross body healing. Like, there is sort of an ebb and flow between all of these. It's not like a methodical step-by-step process. It's sort of an organic moving up and down through it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of times we cycle back to things that we have already worked on. Yeah. And sometimes it can be frustrating because it's like, didn't I already get through this? But healing happens in layers. Yes. And it's not a linear process, it's a spiral. And so when you're circling back around, you may come back to the same issue over and over, but there are multiple layers. There may be things that were missed the last time. So
yeah, exactly. So we're going to start off talking about the ACEs study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, and I'll just stop sharing and we can come back on because we might be discussing this one for a wee bit.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study was a study done in, I think it was the 1970s or 70s or 80s. I tried to go back and find my notes on this, and because there's things I wanted to speak to specifically, and I couldn't find them, so I just Googled it. And my memory is actually pretty good on what I wanted to speak about. So it was done on a group of 17,000 people. So it was a big study group. And it was through a medical insurance company where they got all the participants. And what they did is they did a series of interviews and put forth these 10 adverse childhood experiences and had people check off how many of those 10 experiences they had in their childhood. And what they found was that the more experiences individuals had, the more severe their health issues were as they aged. And so there was a direct correlation between someone who maybe had one or two adverse experiences versus someone who would have had 7, 8, or 9, or 10, and just in the difference in their health issues. And the one thing that I wanted to point out about this study, so you can, we'll put a link below, you can actually go and look at these adverse experiences and do a test yourself. There is a website for that. We'll put a link to that below, because it's really important to recognize that, a lot of us had a lot of shit happen as kids. And, it wasn't our parents' fault. They were unconscious parents parenting unconsciously. They were wounded themselves. And I think, we really have to trust that our parents were doing the best that they could. And the adults in our life, the things that happened were happening because of a deep level of unconsciousness. So, holding that framework in it. But, a lot of crap happened, and it has a direct correlation on our health. And so the piece that I wanted to refer to was an after study that they did, because what they found in this group of 17,000 people, the following year, the people who had participated in the study, the following year, the insurance company had a 30% reduction in claims. And they were like, what's this all about? So they went back and interviewed the people who had reduced claims. And what they found is that many of these people had never told their stories. These people had never spoken of what happened to them. It had all been held inside, and just bringing it to light, just speaking about it, had a profound healing effect on many, many people. So, that's the beginning of healing. Recognizing that these wounds happen, these traumas happen, speaking them out to someone, even like this was just done like on a sheet of paper, check off, yeah, this is what happened, write what you felt, right? So it had a profound effect. So that's where the beginning of healing can happen. Now, the thing you want to be careful of is getting caught in the story and getting caught in the victim consciousness, because that can happen, and you can go to the other end and get stuck and not move through healing because you become attached to the story and everything that happened. The story needs to be told. The story needs to be healed. and then moved on. And we're going to talk about some tools to help you do that.
Yeah. One thing that I really liked that one of the instructors in our A Course in Miracles school one time said that taking responsibility for your healing is not the same as taking the blame for your trauma. Your trauma happened to you, but you are not to blame for that. But it is your job to take responsibility for that, for the healing. Being responsible for your healing just means that you are able to respond. You're able and you're willing to respond. Does not mean that that anyone is blaming you for what happened to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so beautiful. I'm so glad you brought that up. Before we came on, you were also referring to something about the ACEs study that you found very.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
what they found was really interesting is in the people who had many adverse events as a child or lots of abuse, they found that if these people had just one person in their life growing up that was healthy and demonstrated healthy behavior, even if that person wasn't in their life consistently or frequently, they had a much greater chance of having a good mental health as they got older, or they were able to heal faster. So I just found that interesting. Just one person.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
don't ever think that you're not making a difference.
Exactly. And, and that goes back to that 30% of people who told their story for the very first time. It's just that one time. And there was such profound healing came from that. So, if it's, a family that you babysat for and the parents were there for you, like you could go babysitting and then you could chat with a couple of adults who were more conscious. It could be a school teacher, it could be little old lady down the lane, it could be a grandparent, it could be, they're and that comes back to that whole perception thing too. I think that if there's some sense of feeling supported, even if it's infrequently, just that knowing that there's support can change how you perceive the experiences. Yeah. And like you say, you come out with, less symptoms and able to deal with the mental health part of it much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll put a link to that ACEs study if you want to check that out. And I'll bring the PowerPoint back here so we can keep on track. And so, yeah. So things like counseling, shadow work, and trauma work. Oh, you know what I didn't put on here, Emmie? You talked about trauma bonding. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure.
And shadow work too, because a lot of people don't know what shadow work is.
Okay. Yeah. Shadow work is basically just doing inner work, inner healing, working through resentments, or, working through issues, addictions, that kind of stuff. And what was the other thing?
Well, I put trauma work, which is, so counseling, when we do counseling, that's when we start to do the shadow work and the trauma work. But you've talked about trauma bonding, which I wasn't familiar with, and it'd be really.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, when a child is growing up in situations where the parents are unconscious and there is abuse happening or there's addictions, what can happen is attachment issues can form. And I'm sure that you've heard of codependency.
Right.
That's an attachment issue. And what codependency is that you overgive of yourself, and you basically you need to be needed by other people in order to feel valuable. So you'll drop whatever you're doing, you'll go rescue people. Typically a lot of empaths are codependent, and it basically is this relationship where you have someone who is an addict or an abuser, and the codependent person forms a relationship with them where they are enabling and they're rescuing, and they're kind of perpetuating the sick behavior by partnering with it. So that's a little bit about codependency. What trauma bonding is a little bit deeper. It's probably the worst form of attachment, because physiological wiring of your nervous system takes place based on a cyclical pattern of abuse or neglect and love bombing. And by love bombing, I mean just like over the top words of affirmation or affection or gifts or just attention poured over you. That would be love bombing. And so what happens is you have periods of abuse and neglect, which cause, deep wounds in a child. And then you have periods where they are just bombed with love. And when they are in the periods of love, that dopamine, that those feel-good serotonin chemicals that our bodies produce, our nervous systems become wired to that like an addiction. And so as the child grows up, they attract relationships with other kids at school, with other teenagers as they grow, other adults as they, grow into an adult. They attract those kinds of relationships that give them that cyclical high and low. And because your nervous system has been brought into play, and you're almost like addicted to your own feel-good chemicals, the neurotransmitters, that's the word I was looking for. You will unconsciously seek out people and situations that will give you that cyclical pattern. And it's really interesting because it's so ingrained and so subtle that as you clean up your relationships in your life, because that's the way that your body is wired, you will unconsciously end up creating issues and situations that give you that same effect. I know because I did it myself, and it was so subtle and so great an eye opener when I realized that's what I was doing, that it was just like, wow, it's really hard to notice or to pinpoint trauma bonding in yourself. You can recognize it pretty readily in other people. So, if someone has ever said something to you like, you kind of keep attracting these same people, maybe take a look at that and see if that's the case for you.
Wow. So that would be that reminds me of I'm trying to think of the word, when people are like abducted or held hostage.
Stockholm syndrome.
That's it. So that would be a form of trauma bonding.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. So interesting. And this is what I love about working through the Course in Miracles, because the Course in Miracles is literally like a deprogramming system that can get to those things that you don't know are there. Of course, there's other ways to get there. So how did you realize that this is, because I probably realized this before you started doing the course, right?
Yeah. I read a book like 15 years ago called Codependent No More by Melody Beattie.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, and so that's where I was introduced to attachment issues. And I've really been big on self-education. You know, I like to research, I like to read, I like to educate myself. So it was just in my own reading and researching that I happened upon what trauma bonding is.
Okay.
And when I read about it and looked at my own relationships, I realized that, yes, that is me.
Yeah.
And even after healing and cleaning up my relationships, you know, it's been several years since I've had any kind of abuse in my life. But I was still having these situations where my complex post-traumatic stress was being triggered. And I'm like, why is this still happening? Because it would get triggered over the smallest thing. And I realized that it was ego, you know, our software program,
Mhm.
just running the program.
Just running the program.
That's what my nervous system was used to. So, oh, let's trigger her CPTSD over this little itty bitty thing. And
Yeah.
then, you know, once it's triggered, I'm off in this at least a 3-day recovery period because there's so much cortisol and adrenaline pumping through my body that, you know, it takes a few days to recover from that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And, you know, I have very similar experiences where, you know, I had done healing over years. I had done healing and I was still being triggered by these just really insignificant things. And it would like blindside me. And what I realized is that I was reacting to programs that were below my conscious awareness, and I wasn't able to access those other than to observe them. And so my body was running in this constant pedal to the metal stress response, like my nervous system was just stuck on. And and for me, it's been the course, the deprogramming of that software system that has really helped to relax my nervous system. And like I go see an energy healer and she could relax my nervous system pretty good, but it would last like maybe an hour after the session. And then I'd be back sort of in that kind of calm and stressed place. But now what happens is last time I was there, I almost fell asleep, which is like unheard of for me. And the relaxed state lasts for like days and days. And my whole system is way more relaxed. Like, so finally, that program that just automatically reacts is starting to undo. And we're like I guess almost 6 months into it now of just doing the daily lessons. And, you know, the course is actually something you kind of do for a lifetime. So, you know, that's been really powerful. But all these other things have too. I'll bring the screen back up. So, you know, these are things that both Emmie and I have experienced ourselves and, um, you know, healing addictions. That's a really important piece to do. And don't think addictions are just like drugs and alcohol. There can be all kinds of addictions. And 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 things you can do are like art therapy. Uh, I have a book I wrote, Healing Through Creative Expression. I'll put a link to that below. EMDR, which is that I can never remember, but it's like eye motor desensitization or eye movement. Anyways, it's working with the eyes. You need to work with a practitioner with that one. But and EFT tapping, they're kind of related because what those two do is they help you to move through traumas and release the emotional energy around the trauma. So the memory of it doesn't disappear, but the emotional reaction to it does. And EFT tapping does it by tapping on specific pressure points on the body while addressing a negative emotion. And EMDR you need to do with a practitioner. EFT tapping you can do with a practitioner, but you can also do it yourself. And I have a course for that I'll put a link to. And I've got a discount code. I'll give you that discount code, Emmie. You can put it on yours.
Okay.
The emotion code is done by Bradley Nelson. That's another type of tapping. I call it like tapping. It's a much quicker process. You can look that up. Body talk is something I've experienced. This is where Emmie has more experience. You want to take over here? Energy healing?
Sure. Yeah. So different energy healing practices such as Reiki, Eden energy medicine. There's Qigong. Shamanism has energy healing. And then physical therapies like chiropractic and acupuncture. Wow, I'm having a hard time speaking today.
Emmie and I are both having a bit of a bad day.
Yeah, forgive us.
Yeah.
And osteopathy, did I say that right?
Osteopathy, yeah. It's kind of a form of chiropractic, but it's a little bit different.
I'm not sure what Feldenkrais is.
Yeah, Feldenkrais is another. These are all sort of body work things, and massage. Feldenkrais is, it's a very subtle, small movement of the muscles in the body to help retrain muscles that are in patterns of tightness and tension. And
interesting.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful healing modality. we're just touching the tip of the iceberg as far as, these are things that, you can start to do to help your body. This is the physical part of the body begin to heal. And we talked about, like in the Course in Miracles, there's one of the miracles says, miracles, everyone is entitled to miracles, but purification is required first. And, what we have sort of on a physical and energetic and mental level is it's like clogged sewer pipes.
Yeah.
And, we have all this shit. And it's blocking the light of consciousness from moving through what is really meant to be a vehicle for communication. That's what our body is. Our body is meant to communicate consciousness and love and light. But we have all these sort of catalysts and conflicts in our life, and the body gets all clogged up and congested with all these traumas and physical health issues and mental health issues. And so, we need to start purifying and cleaning up the body and the mind and then the spirit. And this is just all part of it.
Yeah. In addition to physical therapies, another good aspect to healing the body is exercise. Especially traditional yogas like Ashtanga.
Yes.
And really just any exercise at all, getting the body moving will start to work out those issues and those traumas that are stored in our tissues. Our body stores our unhealed traumas in our physical tissues.
Yeah.
So,
and those any of the yogas or the tai chis or qigongs, those you're working with the body, with the mind and the spirit. That's working through all those layers at the same time. And yeah, it's so definitely movement. I forgot to include that. Thank you.
we fill in the gaps that the other
we try to, and there's so much. And so then on the slide there was also like hypnotherapy can be really helpful. And then diet and nutrition. And, um, that's such an important piece. And I think, Emmie, you really have done so much healing with
Yeah.
diet and nutrition. Yeah.
I yeah, I have major problems with food. Food is my drug of choice, namely flour and sugar. So I got help with that through a 12-step program, and it not all 12-step programs are healthy. And so, if you want to go that route, I highly recommend. But be aware that not all programs and not all meetings have good recovery.
Mm,
So just be mindful of that. But yeah, I can't speak highly enough about my 12-step recovery program. It saved my life.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, mhm.
And you talked about the fermented foods, how that just
Yes,
would,
fermented food and bone broth. The bone fermented food and bone broth that you make yourself. Now, I know that this stuff has been commercialized, and it's probably better than nothing, but really the best benefit is going to be to make the stuff your own.
yeah,
And especially if you can get organically grown produce that is grown in your area that you live, because it's going to be taking bacteria that are local on those plants and growing that. And then you'll be feeding your body kind of the same lines as to the recommendation of eating local honey, especially if you have allergies or your children have allergies. Eating a tablespoon or a teaspoon of honey every day, local honey, will provide you almost like an allergy shot.
mm, right.
It's really, really interesting.
Yeah. So Emmy and I did decide there will be a part 4 to this series where, you know, as you begin to resolve the biological conflict of self-devaluation and moving into healing your self-worth, you're going to move into the healing phase, which
Mhm.
is going to look like there's something wrong. It's going to look like there's more inflammation, there's more pain, there's more fatigue. There's, it'll seem like you're getting worse. And I experienced that when I started the Course in Miracles. I just couldn't figure out why I was so much sicker. And it's because I was resolving so many conflicts.
Mhm.
So what Emmy and I want to do is we want to have a 4th video where we talk about supporting yourself as you move through the healing conflict. And that'll be, we'll touch on all the different things that you can do to help support yourself as you move through this discomfort. Maybe offering guided meditation. Emmy may offer a Reiki healing, a guided Reiki healing like that. We'll talk about fermented foods, supporting your gut biome so that when you get to that, is that the 4th stage where the uh, microbial part starts to break down all the stuff?
Law number 4, the
Law number
biological
4.
law number 4. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that. So we will be doing part 4. We just can't help it. So coming back to the slides so that we stay on track. Yeah, we'll talk more about diet and nutrition. So moving on to healing the subtle body, mind healing. Again, this is where some of the stuff from the gross healing, healing the body, will move into the mind healing. And here's that spiral in the image, more energy healing, working on the chakra system, spiritual inquiry, self-inquiry. The law of attraction, the law of attraction is a really, really powerful spiritual healing tool because what it shows you is that your mind creates your reality.
Mhm.
And if you can really master that, your mind creates your reality, you start turning towards what you do want and away from what you don't want. And that's where Dr. Joe Dispenza has some really great programs on, shifting your mind away from what you don't want and what you do want.
Mm.
And then we move into the mysticism and Eastern philosophies, and studying teachers such as Eckhart Tolle, Joel Goldsmith, Byron Katie, Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson. There's so many. Do you have any others you'd add to that?
I'm drawing a complete blank, but these are the people that are
Yeah.
typically my go-tos. Yeah.
Yeah. And then this is where you move into the meditation and the mind training, which the Course of Miracles is brilliant for that. And then this is something that Emmie often talks about is the Catalyst Journal. Now, I've never done the Catalyst Journal. I've done a ton of journaling over my lifetime and a lot of healing. But tell people about the Catalyst Journal.
Okay, so the Catalyst Journal is something that was developed by Aaron Abke, and he is one of the teachers in the Course in Miracles school that we are attending. But the Catalyst Journal isn't a part of Course in Miracles. I pulled this and the instructions for it from his YouTube channel, and he has a playlist on there called Spiritual Intelligence, and he explains what the Catalyst Journal is and what the 3 beliefs of ego are. And so there are 3 beliefs of the ego. 1, I am lacking. 2, outcomes bring happiness. And 3, I am in control. So those are the 3 beliefs of ego. I am lacking causes sadness and all of its various forms. Outcomes bring happiness cause anger and all of its forms. And I am in control causes fear and all of its forms. So depending on what emotion you are having while you're triggered, it can tell you which of the 3 beliefs of ego you are believing. And by using this Catalyst Journal to using it as a means of self-inquiry, you can pinpoint where you have attachments, where you believe in lack, where you feel you are in control, and how those things are keeping you stuck in ego thought system. And then after you go through and figure out which of the 3 beliefs of ego you are in, you can use that catalyst to show you and make yourself aware of where these things are going on. And so that would be the masculine healing. And then the feminine healing would be to accept and forgive that part of yourself and let that go. And the more things, the more catalysts, the more life lessons that you bring to a conscious practice like the Catalyst Journal, the sooner your behavior and your actions are going to be healed. And that is karmic healing. That's the causal body. That's the healing in the causal body, the spirit body, the soul. When you're healing your actions and your behaviors, you are healing your karma. You are doing your karmic work. So it kind of overlaps from the mind, the subtle body and the causal body, because you're dealing with emotions and beliefs. But those emotions and beliefs are what cause your behavior. So the more that you make yourself aware and accept and forgive, the more it's going to positively affect and change your behavior.
Yeah, so well explained. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome.
And so those are 2 separate videos on and spiritual teachers. We forgot to mention Aaron Abke.
Oh, right?
That's the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I have learned more from him. And I've watched like all of his videos. Aaron is a master at simplifying complex spiritual teachings.
Yes.
He's just a
Yes.
master at it. He's brilliant. He's young, he's cute, and he's so smart.
So very smart. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, so smart.
So that's a perfect segue into the going, like you say, it moves into then the causal body. And so there were two videos to that. There was one, the three bodies, or the three beliefs of the ego, and then there was the one that has the catalyst
Yeah, and
journal.
I don't think it's titled Catalyst Journal.
No,
I
it's
think he titles it Healing Your Karma.
yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll put those in the description box below as well as, we'll put all the resources we can think of down below. Um, and yeah, so then moving into the causal body, that's where the catalyst journal, takes you into that. And then you start to move into unity consciousness, transcending identification with the body, with the form, with the material world. And again, Joe Dispenza, his work takes you into this. He talks about connecting with the blue beings in some of his workshops. And the blue beings are higher density conscious beings that have the ability to heal us physically, but they vibrate at such a high frequency that they normally can't reach us. But when he has his group gatherings, the energy in the group helps to raise the frequency. And sometimes it gets high enough that they can come down and they can interact. And some of the people have these amazing healings. I know it's a bit woo woo, but I mean, Dr. Joe, he's like just such a normal guy. And like they have these really mystical experiences and some amazing healings. So again, we're into the Course in Miracles in this level. Joel Goldsmith as well, an amazing spiritual teacher, very Christian language, not Christian religious teachings, Christian mystical teachings. And once we're in the causal body, we're looking at service to others via God, the creator, and consciousness, not service from the ego self, service from the higher self.
Mm.
And I just want to speak to, even when you do all of this stuff, you may not actually experience physical healing. You'll experience healing of your mind. You'll experience healing of the spirit, but it is possible that actual physical healing may not happen. But once you reach this level of sort of emotional and spiritual healing, if you continue to have body issues, it doesn't matter because you still may have pain, but you no longer have suffering. And so you see a couple examples of that is like, I don't know if you know Maddie Stepaniak. He was this little brilliant, enlightened soul. Oprah Winfrey had him on her show years ago. And he ended up dying at the age of, I think he was 15, and he had some sort of degenerative disease thing. And the little guy had so much pain and he had so much so many physical issues, but he was totally enlightened. And um, and the law of one is another channeled teaching, and I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but the woman who channeled the law of one, Carla Rucker, was a total she was a very pure being. She was very enlightened that she could receive this. And she had a lot of physical pain and discomfort through her entire life. And she talks about wanderers. And I'm just going to present this idea. I'll come back. I'll stop sharing here. She talks about this idea of wanderers. Wanderers being, if you believe in reincarnation, and if you're here listening to this, I'm sure you do. The fact that our soul moves through sort of these different levels of awakening, and that there are souls that have transcended. They've already moved past sort of this physical body experience, this earth-bound physical body experience, and they're more like light beings, like angels and ascended masters and that sort of thing. And according to the teachings of Ra, these higher beings will reincarnate onto the planet to be spiritual teachers, frequency holders. They'll come to share lessons. Like there's some saying in the Bible where it says, never walk past like someone living on the street without, blessing or acknowledging them, because you might be walking past God. So these beings will come back, and they will be the street people, and they come back to live that really hard life to help teach us compassion and love and like that. And Carla's theory and the Law of One talked about wanderers as being some of these beings that come back to be teachers, frequency holders, whatever. And their spirit body has a hard time being in the physical body. It doesn't fit. It's uncomfortable. And they have a lot of ailments and pain and discomfort and illnesses and stuff like that. And that is also just another part of being in the human body. It can be that your spirit just doesn't necessarily fit in the physical form. Some people may not believe that, but the Law of One talks about that a lot. And Carla wrote an entire book on that called The Wanderers. And so that's just something to consider as well on your healing journey. So let's just go look at the last slide here, which is moving into the supercausal body. This one here, I was just going to write, we don't know anything.
Well, technically we do. We just don't remember.
True. So this is a really high level of consciousness. This is where you have your spiritual masters. You have Jesus, Buddha, Krishna.
I think this is even past that. This is like God, the absolute, like the mind, the one infinite creator. I don't know. I kind of feel like there's more bodies in between these bodies that they're talking about. I could be totally wrong, but
well, it's kind of like the colors in the rainbow, right? Like the colors, yeah. they go through a gradation of, you don't just go from red to orange. There's all the colors in between, like infinite shades in between. And so, yeah, there is a gradation of that. And this is just sort of a very basic concept.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how basic it is. We're trying to make it simple.
We're trying to make it. Yeah.
But yeah, this is a really high level. And, we can't even really speak to it because we're not there, excuse me, as human beings on this planet, just sort of slogging through everyday life. We're kind of really in that gross level body identification, healing the body, moving into healing the mind, and then moving into healing the spirit. And that's sort of, I think, the levels that, we tend to be in, and probably more in the first two levels, because it's really hard to get to that point where you relinquish identification with the body, relinquish identification with form. That's a real high level of spiritual consciousness, and to be able to embody that oneness and seeing like the divinity in everything and having no identification with your ego whatsoever. That's pretty high level awakening.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
We're not there yet.
Goals.
Oh, exactly. But it's possible. It's all possible.
Yes.
So, so next time we're going into how to hold the space for healing. And, that's where we're going to talk about, as you move through healing this conflict, the self-devaluation conflict, how can you support yourself in that process? Because you're going to feel like crap
Yeah,
at times, not
sure.
always. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Mhm. My one of the sayings that goes around in my recovery groups is that you can get through anything so long as you're in fit spiritual condition.
Yeah.
Nothing that happens to the body, no pain, no discomfort, um, can overtake you if you are in fit spiritual condition. And, so many times, life's experiences, even just regular everyday life, like the last 3 weeks, I haven't got good sleep. I've been up 3 times a night taking out a puppy, and my whole entire morning routine, I don't get quiet time. Like, I completely devolved before this video. Like, I had my makeup on and everything, and I cried it all off because I was just like stomping around the house. This is not fair. I don't get any time to myself. It's just-
And and that's the reality of what we're experiencing here. I think we talked about, you have living in the dream, living in the illusion, living in ego consciousness. And then you have the enlightened state, living in oneness, in connection with God, with unity consciousness. And we're moving over the bridge. We're going over the bridge of that. And it's a journey and we're not there yet. So that's so important to be kind to yourself
yeah.
when these things happen because it is part of the journey. And I said to Emmy, I said, sometimes I see her and me because we have a prayer practice every day. And we're kind of like holding hands, skipping across this bridge together. But then every now and then you have to stop and like have a little meltdown
Mhm.
and have a little temper tantrum because we're still human. We're still experiencing being human on the planet, moving towards awakening. And if we were awake, we wouldn't be on the planet. This is the place. This is the place where it happens. So, and we didn't even talk about catalysts, like,
Right.
what is the purpose of being on this planet anyways? It's like we chose to sort of come here and plan all these difficult situations. And, catalysts always are a motivation for evolution. Evolution always happens after some sort of catalyst, and it happens on a universal level. It's happened to the planet. We've had five extinction events. And each time the planet has come out of that extinction event, something has evolved massively. We've gone from single cell organisms to multiple cell organisms. Each time the evolution has become more complex. So what looks like difficulty is really what is propelling us into um, perfection.
Yes. Well said.
Yeah. Well, we'll end on that then.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Well, thank you, Emmy. I just really am enjoying doing these videos with you. It's
Yeah, me
a lot of
too.
fun.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
indeed.
Well,
All
everyone.
right. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.